Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In episode 259, we preview the NFL free agency. What are the Lions going to do? What do they need to do? Who's coming back? What does Taylor Decker's return mean? How about David Montgomery's departure? It's free agency time, folks, so let's dive in. Now, one program note, our offensive line discussion was had before the Lions acquired Juice Scruggs and released Graham Glasgow. So maybe just swap one name for the other in our discussion, even though it isn't quite an apples-to-apples comparison. And we did update our running back discussion as well. We'll get to all of that and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, the former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. He's also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He is the scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, before we get to the draft, we got to go through free agency. You ready to talk about this?
Oh, for sure. It's like Christmas, or where, which way we're going. Getting rid of all those losses. Now we get to move on for more wins.
All right. Well, joining both of us to dissect that, dive in deep, is the sports writer of the year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle, James Cook. James, I can't wait to hear some of your thoughts today.
Yeah, no problem. Going to be drinking the Kool-Aid.
and we'll see how many fans are drinking that Kool-Aid once March 9th, 10th, or 11th hit as well. Folks, free agency is here. Now, the roster's going to have quite a makeover. I think maybe more than we've seen in the last couple of years. And James, you talked about it last year even. The average NFL roster has turnover of about 25%, okay? But I think the Lions are going to see more of it at the upper part than we did the last year or two, which is what's going to make things a little bit different. Just to put things in perspective, in 2025, the Broncos had the lowest turnover of only 14%. The Lions were at 20%. And there were two teams that had the most, the Titans and the Jets. They both had just over 40% of their roster turning over. You saw what their records were at the end of the season. It's hard for that much turnover to result in something that good. But hopefully, as time goes on, that they improve. So roster turnover for the Lions might not be that different than last year, but it's going to be at a different level. During the combine, Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell talked about free agency a little bit, overall philosophy. Holmes said with free agents, it can be hard decisions because they have to look, is that player still rising, or are they staying steady, or are they on the decline? He said it's hard to forecast that. You need to take that into the equation when you're looking at bringing somebody in. Campbell has talked about since the season ended how competition makes everyone better. That's what free agency is going to help with. He said, they can make a big splash. They asked, will they make a splash? He said, well, if you're talking like name recognition and if it aligns, sure, it could work out. But keep in mind, he says, you're going to be out on depth or competition in other areas, and that's going to make some of those things tougher if you're going in heavier in one spot. So you have to look at, is it worth it? And what are the resources? That's one of the things, you guys, salary cap, NFL, this isn't Major League Baseball, right? This isn't spend whatever you feel like. So everyone's got to play within that realm of calculation. So we know decisions versus free agency versus draft, what's available in each, what do you need now? Oftentimes they say, Coach, free agency is you plug the holes now, draft, you build for the future. Would you agree that's kind of the overall thing with obviously some exceptions?
I think it'll change a little bit for the Lions now because of, the last couple of years we've had a lot of those draft picks, the under 25. I think we had the youngest team of starters under 25, and I think we have the most Pro Bowl players under 25, something, And so I think it's going to change. I really believe they're going to start weeding some people out or bringing somebody in to say beat him out, and then they'll weed him out the following year. I think we keep hearing them say competition, and I think this training camp is going to be 90 guys just vying for jobs, and I think some of the guys that thought they were safe may be in trouble.
All right, James, what about you? What are your thoughts on what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell said going into free agency here?
Yeah, I think it's what a lot of the Lions fans who want, the big splashy moves don't want to hear because the Lions would rather bring in six $2 million players to have competition all over the place than one $20 million player. And because there's, like you said, it's an allocation of resources. You only have so many resources under the salary cap and draft picks, all that, and you've got to determine how you spread that around instead of just making a splash at one play.
Yeah, and it's the Lions had how many Pro Bowlers this year and how many the year before, and you're paying those guys. Now, most of the time when you pay somebody, like, for years the Lions had to overpay people to come here, and you often do it when you're on a team that doesn't have as much talent. Now, sometimes there are exceptions to that, but like they said, you've got that calculus. You've got to figure out what can work, what can mesh, and the Lions are in a spot now where a lot of these draft picks are now already getting paid, and some are going to have to get paid, which also affects how much freedom they have with the salary cap. We already know the structures that are going to have to take place. They're going to have to restructure a couple guys likely to make some things happen. So let's start with the area that only everybody has talked about and their brother and their mother all season, which is the offensive line. Okay. Always looking to add competition to the line, Brad Holmes said, offensive and defensive. They want depth help, not just center, though. They want to add both sides of the ball in free agency. They'll look at that in the draft. Now, let's set the thing. Graham Glasgow still under contract, you guys. And so they're hoping to get clarity on Graham soon. Tate Ratledge, they said center's still an option. He played really well at right guard as the season went on. He got better. Wasn't doing anything wrong last year. They just felt it was an easier transition because they considered him at center and said, you know what? They just think as a rookie, maybe it was a better transition to put him at right guard. But there's still promise, and they could move him there. They have that flexibility. Plus, as we talked about in our last episode, you guys, Decker's back at left tackle. That's a good thing. But I think we all agreed it doesn't change a whole lot, maybe changes some things. But Skipper is out. He has retired. They do want competition for the interior. Coach, what are you seeing with the offensive line here and what the Lions might consider doing?
Well, I think, with him coming back and James alluded to it earlier, we're going to build that competition. Frazier, he was brought in for that reason. So we have a guy in the building right now. People don't talk about him very much. James, last time we talked, brought that up. So I think that's one of the things that's that guard position, maybe that tackle position concept, where they can push and see what happens. I think the biggest thing is it's going to be interesting to see if the free agent, if we had talked about the centers at the combine, is there a plug and play center that we're going to get, or do we at free agency go out and get one of these? I think there's seven centers out there. Mays, Corbett, Baez, the guy from Washington. We won't even talk about Lindenbaum because we're not going to get him. Cushenberry from Tennessee. Is he going to be another one? Are we going to bring in? I mean, these guys are all guys that have played. Cade Mays from Carolina was another one that I've seen mentioned. So I think that's going to determine where the competition is going to come, whether we go another free agent at a tackle spot or a free agent at a guard spot, or do we feel we're going to be able to lock a draft pick in that's going to push for a starting spot. And again, I talk about the plug and play centers and then a plug and play guard. Tackle wise, we don't really need somebody to be able to jump in there with Deck back, but we do need somebody to take over when Deck leaves. And
Coach, before you pass on to James here, sorry I cut you off there.
You're right.
Tate Ratledge, do you want to keep him at right guard or do you want to move him to center, or you don't care?
I want to leave him at right guard. I think the communication is, I'm the old, and again, maybe he's going to be that good of a center that he can come in and start. That maybe they just were holding back. They wanted a veteran there, but I think the center position needs to be brought in, a free agent, somebody that has experience, because we saw how bad our offense suffered last year. And Graham, I'm not slamming Graham Glasgow. God bless him for jumping from, right guard, great right guard to a not so good left guard, and then jumping in at center, doing whatever he has to do to stay on the team. But I just think they've talked about that so much that is such a huge position. He's the first guy that touches the ball and has to call, blocking assignments and stuff like that. So I think we leave Ratledge there and either find that there's a plug and play center. Do we get him at 17? Maybe we're not going to get him at 17. So that's where I think the free agency comes out, and I think we go after a center. I really believe we're going to go after one of these centers.
All right, James, let's put that same question to you and then expand on it. But we know we got Tate Ratledge at right guard. You want him moving to center? You want to keep him at right guard? Center thoughts? Get us
I think
started.
the flexibility just gives them options. I think them bringing it up, is maybe part of a draft smokescreen. We're not necessarily in the market for a center because we've got this guy. Or it could just be genuine that's what they drafted him to be. That they were hoping they were going to get another year out of Ragnow and be able to mentor him for a year and then move him over to center or something like that. So I'm not sure what their plans are, but I mean, I don't have any doubt that he could do it. But they're in the position where if they're in the right position in the draft and a guy that they really like is there, they can just take a center and leave him there. Why, and then you're set at both spots. So it gives them a lot of options. I think it's good. Another maybe cheap option for them is, who's a free agent, Kevin Zeitler. So
If it put him at right guard, yeah.
Yeah. And then you move Rutledge over to center. If they wanted to go a little bit cheaper and not have to put in as high draft picks or anything like that. So there's plenty of options with the Lions and offensive line. And we talked in the combine thing about how many good tackles there are in this draft. So that, this draft lines up really well with what the Lions need, which is awesome. The offensive line, interior on the tackles, defensive line, and safeties are all incredibly strong, and linebacker as well. I think they may look at some linebackers in the middle rounds as well if they do not re-sign a few guys.
All right. Well, staying with the offensive line, I think it's pretty much presumed Graham Glasgow will not be the starting center next year. He's under contract, and I guess they're still waiting to hear what he wants to do. Not even looking at the dollars aspect because I'm not quite sure where all that lands. I would feel really good if Graham is our top backup, if he's a top guy there. I do hope we bring in a center, a veteran center in free agency. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, we already know it's not going to be Linderbaum, but it doesn't have to be one of the top ones. It's got to be someone who's got starting experience, who might be considered, average to above average, or somebody I think I saw above mediocre or something like that. But that way you have the option if a guy falls to you, you can draft him or not. Also, the Tate Ratledge thing, they might be grooming him to be what Graham Glasgow was, which is your backup center, keeping him at right guard, but then you got him to fill in should your center go down. So that could be a thing too that they could look at. Free agency, I do want them to bring in a center. They've looked, there's a tier 1 and then there's tier 3. But you guys have brought up, I think Arizona's center is a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. We talked about the Washington one. Again, I haven't gone too deep on all these guys, but there are some options out there. I want to see them bring in a guy who's got starting experience in the last year or two. I think that's probably my number one desire in free agency, because even though, Coach, I hear you, defense wins championships. You saw it happen in the Super Bowl this year. The Lions offense has to get back to what it was, because there's a lot of spots on the defense that need help. And so while we want the defense to improve, we need the offense to be able to run the ball, because that helps the defense. So I'm saying free agency, center is priority number one. And you get a good center, and then you keep Ratledge at right guard. And then you've got Miles Frazier in there. You talked about that. Mahogany's going to get healthy again. And he's going to have another year of growth. I think you've got some good competition right there for left guard. And if you got Graham Glasgow back on the roster as well, he could be a backup for any of those three interior spots. And that'd be a pretty good spot to be in.
For sure.
So
Yeah, and also keep in mind that Biotish from the Commanders was let go from there. He's a starting center with a lot of experience, made a Pro Bowl. Is only 28, so that's fairly young for offensive line, and won't break the bank. He's not going to come cheap, but he's not going to be nearly as expensive as Linderbaum is going to go either. So that's maybe an option, or just another guy on the market that maybe lowers the asking price at center or something.
Yeah,
all right.
your big name ones are McGovern from Buffalo, which I don't think he's gonna. But you got Kuzenberry, Cade May. I'm telling you that there's I think there's enough guys out there if the Lions believe in them, they're gonna. I think they'll make that cheap.
Yeah. And then again, that you get a center, and then the draft could always be another one. And it's not like, oh, we can't draft a center if you sign somebody. And that's why it depends where you're signing people too, because it could be somebody in the second half of their career that might have 2 or 3 quality years left, or even like, Zeitler, he could retire. He could play another year or two. I think the Lions talked to him last year about coming back. It didn't happen. He signed with his hometown. Team. I think it was hometown, but where his family's from. So, all right. Anything else on the offensive line? Again, there is some competition for the left guard. I like that. I'm optimistic. I honestly think if you just take care of the center, and now that Decker's coming back, I think you're drafting left tackle. Now, if you want to sign a free agent left tackle, I'm not opposed to that, but I don't think you're putting much money into that in free agency, considering what you're paying Decker and Sewell right now. You kind of, that offensive line's expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other thing to keep in mind is that they lost their developmental backup center, which was Kingsley Egwakon, who got poached by the Browns at the end of the season. So they had what they thought was maybe a guy that they could develop there and could be a potential guy in the future for them, and they lost him early in the season. You got Coyote Awashika as a free agent, Tristan Colon as a free agent on the offensive line as well.
And I don't want to go into the draft being desperate for a center. Then you're forced to trade up, or you know what I mean? Then there's so much pressure, and you're not in control, because the Lions want to be able to draft the best player available. And if they happen to fill a plug, great, or fill a need. But yeah, that's why center's got to be number one for me. Let's go to the extension though, the offensive line, which is still on the tight end position, you guys. Before Petzing, we've all talked about this, if not in the shows, at least off the air between ourselves. The Lions need to bring in a tight end. You got Sam Laporta and Brock Wright, both solid. Laporta is more than solid. He's incredible. But they're both coming off of back injuries. Wright's also, or not back injury, but both coming back from injury. Wright is entering the final year of his contract. You guys, the sweet spot for me is bring somebody in that is right between Sam Laporta and Brock Wright. It's really important in case there's an issue with either one of them. And this, you want to have somebody there so you're not going lower, lower, lower. You want to keep the talent level high up there, coach. And so, do you agree? Do they need to bring in a tight end? Does it need to be a free agent? Does it have to be somebody that is as good or better than Brock Wright? Or can it be some of the guys they brought in like in the last year or two?
Yeah, are they looking at the draft on some of those guys? Is that possible? Because there's some guys drafted last year that did phenomenal, especially with the Rams. The tight end. So free agent tight end would be totally awesome, because then you got somebody with experience. You've already seen if he can block. You've already seen if he can catch. And I think that's one of the things that they're going to look at. Again, we're looking the free agency as we're talking about it. There's a lot of guys out there. The top two, of course, Pitts and Kelsey, you're not going to touch. But Likely from the Ravens is out there. He's more of a pass catcher. David Njoku from the Browns is out there. Goddard from the Eagles is out there. Another veteran. Higbee from the Rams, experienced veteran. Taysom Hill from the Saints. Yeah, I'm just, those are so. It'll be interesting to see if we do that, and especially if we trade Laporta, we're definitely going to have to bring in another tight end.
No,
I shouldn't have brought it up.
We need to put up a sign whenever coach uses sarcasm so people realize what it is. But yeah, we've talked.
But if they trade Laporta, they're getting Max Crosby back, and they can just play him on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he's going to play on both.
He'll play tight end too.
James brought up the whole list a couple episodes ago, but there are so many free agent tight ends out there.
Yeah.
I mean, Noah Fant is a free agent tight end. Adam Troutman, a name that should be familiar to people from
Yeah.
Michigan, is out there. And so there are a lot of guys that they could bring in that won't break the bank, that would elevate. And if you're going into the season with Brock Wright as your number 3 tight end, that's an elevation right there, and it's some good insurance. James, what are you seeing? Is there a certain guy or two that you like, and what are your thoughts on what the Lions need to do at the tight end room?
Yeah, well, like you said, there's a lot of free agents at tight end this year. Guys who can just come in and immediately slot in as your number 2 or 3 tight end. You can do all the things that Drew Petzing may or may not do with tight ends in the offense this season. Kate Otton's another guy that's a free agent.
Yeah.
Chiga Kongwo, Darren Waller. The list of free agent tight ends this year is really long and really pretty good with veterans who know what they're doing. The draft is fairly deep in tight ends, but they're all usually one or the other. There's only a few guys at the top who are both really good blockers and good catchers of the ball. Then the
Mhm.
later in the draft, you're picking one or the other. You get a guy who can block, or you get a guy who's a wide receiver as kind of a tight end. So, and then there's also the possibility, I think, that they bring back Kenny Yeboah, who's a guy that they signed last year to a
Yeah.
one-year contract at tight end and got hurt in training camp and never played for him. He would be a pretty cheap option as well, and is a good blocking tight end and a capable receiver.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the Lions are going to sign a free agent tight end, and I think they're going to draft one. They're going to draft a tight end, and we'll see what happens with everything. But let me ask you guys this: what do you think the odds are the Lions carry 4 tight ends on the roster? That's going to be hard to do because if you do 4 tight ends, then you're looking at what, 4 wide receivers instead of 5, or 5 wide receivers instead of 6. I mean, that would be a lot, but we also know they don't use a spot for the fullback anymore.
Yeah. Well, you could just use David Montgomery's spot for another tight end, right?
Oh gosh, what am I going to do with you guys?
I know. I don't think, off of that, if they'll sign 4 if he can play special teams. I mean, you got to remember, you get on the
Mhm.
Yeah.
field, the younger guys got to get on the field with special teams. So if you got some guys that can cover run punt, run kickoff, stuff like that. Yeah, then they'll keep 4. I mean, I think that's pretty easy. Especially if it's one of the younger guys too, so yeah, it'll be cool. I think, the first thing when that tampering starts is to hear them tampering with the tight end and tampering with the center. Will, definitely determine what they're going after and how they're going to attack it. Yeah, Zylstra's still a free agent too.
He is. Yep.
Back. I mean,
And Berkshire.
yeah, I like the Otten one because he's only 26, 27, and but he can go through those all day long. But the guys that they're going to need guys that want to block, that, and Brock Wright, but somebody like you said, in between the two is awesome. So I could see him keeping 4.
Yeah, I could totally see him keeping 4 too, just because it's a position that you can get good depth at fairly cheaply.
Yeah.
And if they have concerns about the long-term injury status of Laporta and Wright, that these injuries could trickle into the season, or that they could at any time, re-aggravate those injuries. I mean, back and the neck injury, are kind of scary things. So I think they're going to want to build some depth behind those guys just in case too.
Yeah, and bringing guys in that have a higher ceiling than some of what you had left last year after injuries hit is huge. Going in knowing that there's a potential for something. Again, 2 guys coming back from injury, you got to get somebody else that you would be like, hey, if this guy has to start for us, we can run our offense. And that's what it comes down to. You need to sign a free agent who can be your starting tight end. Doesn't have to be elite, but they have to be a starting tight end to run the offense if Sam Laporta or Brock Wright are out. Because we often run 2 tight end sets with things, right? So that's what I'm looking for there. I guess let's stay on the offensive side of the ball. Wide receiver guys. Khalif Raymond's a free agent. I guess I would like to see them bring him back, 'cause I think he's a great part of the offense. I like what he does with special teams as well. Coach, what are your thoughts on Khalif Raymond or the wide receiving core in general, which is mostly set in the top 3, I think?
Yeah, I don't mean Khalif hasn't done anything warrant not to bring him back. I mean, he gives us everything he has, and he makes some splash plays here and there when he needs to. So I think that's one of the ones, unless there's somebody else out there or they draft somebody. But I just think he's one of the ones, and he's a great locker room guy. So he's not one of those guys you have to bring somebody in to challenge for a spot because I think he challenges himself every day. So it'll be interesting to see on that one. But he's not losing anything other than we do have another return guy, and one of the rookies from last year that may push that. But I just see I see us keeping him.
All right. What are you thinking, James? Khalif's the free agent. Do you see us bringing him back? Otherwise, like Coach said, we did draft a couple guys last year. If you want to get a little bit less expensive, I don't know what the cost will be for Raymond.
Yeah, I can't see the cost for Raymond being that much, in that he's a wide receiver who's not a spring chicken anymore, even though he's still got pretty good wheels and everything. And he can do a variety of roles. He can play on special teams in multiple places. He's a great slot guy. I think that they drafted Dominic Lovett to eventually replace him, but I don't know that he's ready to do that yet. So there's your fourth and maybe fifth receiver, and if they go six, you've got Jackson Meeks in house already. Still, so I don't know that wide receiver is anything you're going to see a whole lot of movement with on the Detroit Lions, other than just re-signing what they got. If they can bring back Raymond on a reasonable deal, maybe not as much as the contract that they signed him to a couple years ago, but still something fair.
Yeah, and that I hope they do. I hope they bring him back. I love everything that he brings to this team and
Mhm.
what he embodies. So, um, let's talk running back. I meant to say quarterback, but running back came out, so I guess we're talking running back. Folks, a quick heads up: we recorded this section again as things changed before we actually published. So, guys, now that the Lions have in fact traded David Montgomery, what do we think the Lions are going to do with free agency? You've got Jameer Gibbs, we've got Sione Vaki, we've got with the Jacob Sailors. There are some other guys out there who could run that complementary role, but you know, is that it? What are you thinking? Are they going to go in for somebody like an Isaiah Pacheco, a Brian Robinson Jr.? There's a number of guys out there like J.K. Dobbins. James, what's your initial gut feeling here as free agency is getting ready to start and the Lions now have a need at running back?
Yeah, I think that they're going to go after somebody in free agency. There's a lot of good veteran running backs out there. There's a decent number of pretty experienced veterans who aren't going to be able to ask for a lot of money. Kind of guys who are kind of in the same David Montgomery kind of age and experience, kind of thing. Although I think maybe Montgomery being 1B this year, the last 3 years has kind of put a little bit more tread on his tires. But you got guys like James Conner that are free agents, guys like Rico Dowdle, J.K. Dobbins, Joe Mixon reportedly going to be released by the Texans after they acquired uh, Demo. So there's veteran guys out there that can be had that aren't going to break the bank. There's some other ones out there that, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they reached out to guys like Tyler Algier, uh, J.K. Dobbins, guys like that. Rico Dowdle probably not going to be super cheap either, but he would be a pretty nice backup to have behind Gibbs.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, James Conner might get released
Might
by
get
Arizona,
released.
but he's under contract with them still, right?
Mhm. Yes,
All right. Coach,
but
how about you? How are
reportedly.
you seeing this? Free agent options? What do you think Lions might do?
Yeah, I think there's enough of them out there, and if we can cut the salary in half, from what they're paying Demo, then it's going to be it's a win-win. We got draft picks, we got another offensive lineman for that trade. I think Brad Holmes did a great job. One of them, one you didn't mention, is Kenneth Gainwell.
Okay.
Pittsburgh. I mean, and again, he had some, uh, you know, he had a ton of catches. Well, look at the catch he had against us. Jeez, oh man! But every one of these guys are physical runners, which is probably what they're looking for. And they're also have been in that role before. Some of them have been in that role before, where okay, I'll be ready when you call on me. And I'm not knocking on tapping on
Mhm.
Campbell's shoulder saying, hey, I need to get in there and get some more reps. So yeah, so I think we're gonna have a good field to look at, and I think the money will be right. And of course, that's what Brad Holmes will do because we need to save some money to get some other free agents.
Yeah, I go back to that bruising type running back, and I'm like a broken record here. I still love the analogy Justin Rogers made. The Lions had Kamara and Ingram. Now they're looking for Kamara and Murray,
Yeah.
Latavius Murray.
Yeah.
Uh, honestly, guys, we went Jamal Williams to 4 years ago. That's what we're
Yeah.
looking for right now. A guy like that who can play that role, and that's the ideal person. Now, who that person is, I don't know. But if you get Jamal Williams of 4 years ago, that is the perfect complement to Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's what the Lions need. Quarterback. Jared Goff's not going anywhere, coach. Settle down, okay?
Oh,
We got to talk about backup quarterback. He is a free agent, Kyle Allen. We have nobody else on the roster that I'm aware of. I just want them to re-sign Kyle Allen, man. That guy looked capable. He looked competent, and hopefully he never sees the field ever. So I'm very happy with everything he brought to the table and everything that he did in training camp. Coach, what are your thoughts on the backup quarterback position?
yeah, I think there's, definitely, unless one of those other free agents, you can get somebody in for what we're paying him, and which isn't going to happen. But he's confident. I think he knows the offense, and I don't think there's a competition factor that the Lions think that they need to push him to get better. I think he does it on his own also.
Yeah. James, what do you see out of the backup quarterback position?
Yeah, I think they re-signed Kyle Allen. I mean, he knows the offense. He's had starting experience before. He's played in the NFL, um, and and he comes for a backup quarterback even pretty reasonably
Mhm.
as far as his contract. He didn't even get really backup quarterback money last year. He got like third string quarterback money.
Yeah, well, I like that he was in the system last year. They know everything about him. I mean, the other guys that get listed around his category would be like Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Howell, Trey Lance, Kenny Pickett, Tyrod Taylor, Zach Wilson, Carson Wentz, Tyler Huntley. And I'm like, Kyle Allen looked good. The coaching staff knows what they have in him. Re-sign him.
Mm.
You want to draft somebody late in the draft because you should always take flyers from time to time. I'm open to that. So,
He was 1.2 million last year.
all right.
Yep.
Well, let's jump over to the defense then, guys. There's a lot more to discuss on the defense. There's a lot more variables over here. Let's start on the defensive line because that's everybody's favorite topic. No, we won't start at defensive end. We'll start on the interior. The big news this offseason was Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Paschal are both coming back. Brad Holmes said that they're bringing back Levi and Josh back. They still have to have some discussions on Josh though. So it sounds like it's not a guarantee that he's on the 90 man even. There might be health things. It might not be. Who knows what it's related to. But my reaction is Levi and Josh, at least you got them back in the mix. That really helps add something in there. But you can't bank on it. You know what I mean? It's got to be like, they're on the 90-man roster if that works out. And then from there, you see who the best 53 are. So I think that's a good starting spot. Coach, what was your reaction to the news of Levi and Josh coming back?
I was weird that they were talking about not bringing both, but I think it's great if both come
Yeah.
back. If Pascal doesn't come back, then I think it's deeper than what we know.
Yeah.
Because of his injuries and because of the things he's had in the past. So, but great leader. So I think it's good having those guys come back and not having to pay them a whole lot of money.
All right. James, any thoughts on those guys being back in the mix?
Yeah, when healthy, Levi gives them a great guy to add in there in that defensive tackle rotation. DJ Reader's a free agent.
Yep. So
Roy
is Lopez.
Roy Lopez is a free agent. They're the only three defensive tackles I think that they have under contract for next year are Aleem, Tyleek, and Mekhi Wingo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Levi now.
And Levi now.
So they got four, and I think that's a decent four, but they'll probably add something to that. Brad Holmes has showed that he likes having depth there, and the defensive coaches have indicated that they like to be able to rotate those guys too. So I wouldn't be shocked if DJ Reader comes back on a pretty team-friendly deal to play one more year. And then your defensive tackle position is looking pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to bring Reader back and, I would like to see Roy Lopez come back.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lopez too. I would rather have Lopez than Reader at this point.
I would agree.
It really. The interesting. I'm looking at a free agent list of rankings of free agents right now, and they have DJ Reader listed as the second best defensive
Yeah.
tackle free agent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? DJ Reader will probably command more money than Roy Lopez at this point as well. Uh, I don't feel like the Lions need to bring in an outside person at defensive tackle. I feel like what we have right there, if we can bring back Lopez or Reader, um, then I think you're probably okay there. But you want to be able to bring one of those guys back. And, otherwise, because you've already got Tyleek, Wingo, and Aleem McNeil, and McNeil having the full offseason after his injury and stuff. I mean, he's got to be one of the highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL. And so if he's going to return to form, you're looking for guys that are playing in a rotation. You said that, James. And so I'm okay with that spot.
Yeah. We spent 14.5 between Lopez and Reader last year.
Yeah.
Lopez was 3.5 and Reader was 11 million. So maybe we could split that and get both of them back for 9.
Well,
Yeah, 9 million between the two of them, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah, I'll let you tell them that.
Reader, but like James said, I think Reader's one of those ones. He said he doesn't want to move again.
Oh, yeah.
I think he may just say, hey, give me, X amount. He's 30, what is he, 31.7. So he's 32 years old. And he may just say, man, I get, freaking, I don't want to leave and I like it here. And I don't think Lopez is going to, I think I think he'll demand a little bit more money, but I see him
Yeah.
signing for the exact same money I already signed for. I think they like it. So.
All right. Well, if the center line there, the defensive tackle position could be better than we were thinking with those guys potentially back and with Anzarike back. But also if they can bring back Lopez or Reader. Otherwise, if none of those guys are coming back, you need to bring somebody else in. But we do still have some high-level talent at the top. The area where it gets a little bit more under the microscope has been for multiple years is everyone's favorite position. Don't say the trigger words, please, but we're going defensive end, okay? Al-Qadim Muhammad, Marcus Davenport, those are a couple of free agents that the Lions have at the defensive end position. James, get us started. What are you thinking that the Lions might do out there? I mean, obviously everybody knows we've got Aiden Hutchinson on the other side.
I mean, they're going to have that rotation next year of Hutchinson, Hendrickson, and Crosby, right? That's what everybody on Twitter keeps saying, that they're going to make both of those moves. Yeah. None of those things aren't financially realistic. It sounds great. Looks great on paper. Looks good on your Madden team. But not going to happen. Unless Hendrickson takes a sweetheart deal somewhere.
So what? Okay, I guess let me be a little more specific. Do you think the Lions re-sign Al-Qadim Muhammad? My gut feeling is no.
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
This is his time to get a contract and set himself up for life. He's 29, 30 years old. This is the last chance to get a payday. He needs to take advantage of that. He's been a kind of a fringy NFL guy, so he's made some money, but he hasn't made a lot of money in the NFL. So yeah, he needs to go out and get a contract and get as much as he wants, and that's not going to be probably in Detroit. He's got to take advantage of getting 11 and a half sacks last year and make some money. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him a bit.
Now,
again,
do you go ahead, Coach?
Well, his market, I think he's thinking that 7.8, which is what his market value is, and he made 1.5, a little under 1.5 last year for us. But for us, he's not a run stopper and a pass rusher, unless they believe they're going to turn him into both of those. I mean, he's a system player, and the Lions don't want. I don't think they want to do that, system. We got to bring the pass rusher in. We want to make sure he can stop the run. So, yeah, it'll be interesting with that. But they also may say we can, we can keep him here and pay him a little extra money, and he's gonna, is he gonna have the reps that warrants an $8 million contract?
Yeah, and the way I see it is, I want the Lions to sign a free agent. Okay. I don't think Marcus Davenport's coming back. If he does, I'm
No.
not opposed to it as long as he's a number 4 guy, but I don't see it happening. But if he did at 4, that's fine. Is like your 4th guy down there. Um, I think a realistic thing to consider would be finding a defensive end who has had some success in the league and maybe elite success in the league, but is in the last couple years of their career. So that way you're not overpaying because you can't afford to overpay. I mean, again, if you look at how did the Rams win that Super Bowl a few years back? They got Von Miller and OBJ on nice contracts through trades or signings, discounted prices that were friendly to the salary cap in the season. So the Lions need to find a guy that would elevate the other side. But it's also, like you said, Jim, it's not a video game. You've got a Lee McNeil in the middle, and that
Mhm.
guy's getting paid a lot of money. I mean, how much money can you afford to put on that defensive line? Are you going to play with no linebackers? Because you're going to have to pay Jack Campbell here in a minute. And so, everything, it's all an equation. Uh, I want them to bring some guys in. It's not going to be a superstar. You have one superstar. And the nice thing is the Lions didn't have to trade 2 first-round picks to get him.
Mhm.
Okay. We saw somebody just do that. You trade first round picks for a superstar when you can't draft one. Fortunately, the Lions aren't in that position. So I don't know what name is going to fit the system. Everyone's going to bring up Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, different guys who have been around for a while that could, make an impact. I haven't scouted their game. I don't know who's the right fit of all the defensive ends out there, but there's a number of them out there. I do want them to bring in at least one guy, and then we'll see what the draft looks like. You could get a guy in the first or second round. Coach talked in the last episode from the combine. There's a lot of defensive end depth in there. So, Coach, what are some of your thoughts on the defensive end area?
Yeah, I think the same what you said. We do have a guy coming back too, Hussein. That we don't talk about
Mhm.
him. So
Ahmed
I think
Hassanin, we didn't bring him up yet.
Hussein.
You're right.
I think he's a bonus. I'm looking at some of the free agent guys that are warrant that $8,000, and you know Michael Dannon. I'm going to bring him up because he plays for the Chiefs. Okay, he's worth $5,000. They say that's what his or $5,000, 5 million would be what his contract's going to sign for. Is he a better run stopper than Muhammad and going to get probably not going to get 11 sacks? So I think we got some guys in camp that are going to be able to do it. I think Levi helps in that situation if he stays healthy, and then we can do some situation things. But yeah, it'd be nice to get somewhat of a splash guy, but the draft's a pretty good area for that too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, people see, Bradley Chubb got released, right, by the Dolphins or whatnot. So, I mean, you can throw all these names out there that people recognize, and people, I mean, Mac is like 35 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So, ideally, you would like somebody who can contribute, even if it's just a 1-year deal, and then you draft somebody and help set you up. But I don't see the Lions overpaying for this position, or like we talked about with Al Qadim Muhammad, overpaying for somebody who's later in their career either, James. Any other thoughts you got on defensive end?
Yeah, the name I'm going to throw out there is a guy who's later in his career, and they're not going to have to pay a whole bunch, but he's still productive, and that's Cam Jordan.
Yeah.
Ah,
The
I
Saints are
looked at him too.
rebuilding.
Yeah.
The Saints are rebuilding. He's got connection with Dan Campbell from his days in New Orleans. He had 10 and a half sacks last year. He's 36, so he's going to be cheap, but he's also a big defensive end like they
Yep.
like. So
Yep.
he fits the mold everywhere, and he's got impeccable character
Mhm.
and locker room guy. I mean, he fits everything the Lions want, except not being 24 years old anymore.
Yeah.
and that could make it so he can get in the door, and
Mhm.
and you could sign him, and I'd rather sign him at 35, 36 than signing somebody else at 24, 25 who's injured all the time, right?
Mhm.
Because that's kind of, I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't worked out at times, but that's been the MO is that. And so that is a perfect example right there, James, of the type of guy that Lions fans I think should expect for the Lions to look for in free agency opposite, and then maybe take a shot in the draft.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, I
All
see
right.
them double tapping that. You go get a veteran guy and you draft somebody.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back a row. Let's go to the linebacker position. All right. We know the Lions have Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes under contract. I believe Trevor Nowaski is an exclusive rights free agent. Um, but there's some regular free agents out here. Alex Anzalone is going to get the most name recognition, as will Malcolm Rodriguez. Those guys, Grant Stewart as well, and Zach Cunningham. Um, I guess Anzalone is a guy we would love back, but I don't think the Lions are going to be able to afford him. I think he's going to be able to get a bigger payday somewhere else. Uh, I would love to have Rodriguez or Stewart back, and same for Cunningham as a depth piece. You're already paying Barnes. You're going to be paying Campbell. Coach, break down the linebacker room and how you see it.
Anzalone looks like market value is seven million. Okay, we paid him 6 last year, guaranteed. So I mean, is he gonna is $1 million, $1.5 million moving, and maybe not guaranteed money going to keep him in? So I think Rodrigo, we definitely need to have him back too. He won't cost us as much, but I think Anzalone is one of the ones that we keep. It seems like he wants to be here. You're seeing his social media stuff, I think he loves the room. They love Shep. We already talked about the NFL grade. We got an A. And so I think, what are you going to look at? So I think he'll test it. And I think if it's way too high, then the Lions are going to let him go. But if he tests it and it's right around that $6 million, $7 million mark, I think the Lions will sign him.
All right. I could be way off on this. And James, you tell me if you think I am.
Mm-hmm.
Anzalone wanted to sign a multi-year extension. He wanted
Mm-hmm.
another year. I wouldn't be shocked if he would be happy playing at 6 million. But I can't wonder if maybe the Lions don't think the 6 million price tag fits into their salary cap equation. I could be way off on that one, but if you paid Barnes and you're going to pay Campbell, the Lions are a better team when Anzalone's on it and on the field. I'm just wondering if this becomes one of those unfortunate cap casualties, or if Anzalone has to choose between 7 million and 4 million. I don't know. What are you looking at, James?
I think the biggest number with Anzalone isn't the cap hit. I think it's a linebacker that's over 30. Holmes is really not, seems to be one of those GMs who does not want to pay people premium prices on that side of 30. And he's going to be 32 at the very beginning of next season, in September next year. So I think that's the biggest. I think that there's a pretty realistic chance they re-sign him to a 1-year deal for next year. It won't be a multi-year thing. They'll be like, if you can go out and get a 2-3 year contract for that somewhere else, God bless you, go do it. But I think Holmes is going to just offer him 1 year.
Yeah, I have a feeling that might be the case. It's a 1-year offer because he wanted to re-up last year. But coach, couple things here. One, if he does get a 2 to 3 year offer somewhere else, that's more security, that's more stability.
Mm-hmm.
But does the Lions playing base versus nickel, how much they expect to do it, does that impact how much they're willing to pay Anzalone? Because that would impact if you're going to have Barnes and Campbell and Anzalone, you got to be playing base to get all 3 guys on the field.
Right. Yeah, because you got, you take Rodrigo and you take Nowaski too. So you're looking at, all those free agents, and are they gonna, they're the lowest number, they're the highest number base, I think, in the league, where they run their 4-3 and they use their linebackers in coverage. Are they going to go more to a nickel concept? Are they going to say that, we got Amik Robertson, who's probably one of the best nickels in the game. We're going to get him on the field some more, or are we going to draft somebody else? But then you start looking at, oh my God, we got 2 safeties that are still hurt, and we got corners that, that are coming back off of injury. So that's the thing is, I think I just don't see them getting away from base. I see the percentage going down, but not immensely, where they're playing nickels 70% of the time. I just don't see them doing that.
Yeah, and obviously being able to you could play base to make up for deficiency in nickel, because that's what we're gonna. You hit on it right. What I was thinking is they're gonna have to. Secondary's tricky this year, and we're gonna talk about that in just a moment. But they may have to use some resources that they would like to put at the linebacker position to add even more depth in the secondary. James, anything else on linebacker?
No, I think that's pretty. I mean, I think that they'll probably try to bring back some of those depth pieces too.
Yeah.
Rodrigo, Stewart, they really like him and Cunningham. With if they bring those guys back, then the other guy that's a free agent for them is Zeke Turner. That makes it tougher that they bring him back. But he's
Yeah.
a veteran minimum type guy anyway. I mean, so is Cunningham really. But I'd like
Well,
to see them re-sign Rodrigo and Cunningham and Stewart and have that depth
yeah.
that they had last year and special teams versatility.
Agreed. And I'm going to quickly jump back to defensive end a minute, guys. I just want to remind people when the Lions drafted Aiden Hutchinson, how big of a deal that was because Kayvon Thibodeau was drafted at number 5, you guys. And if I read things correctly, the Giants didn't pick up his 5th-year option. He's in the final year of his contract. And so just think about that for a minute. And James, you talked about that. Maybe it was in our, I don't know if it was this show or if it was in our previous episode, but hitting on those first and second round draft picks, I think we talked about in the combine episode, is really big. I mean, hitting on Hutchinson and being able to get that guy versus, hey, that's a top 5 pick that might not be on that team next year. So thankful we got Hutch. So, okay. The secondary puzzle. This may be the most complex puzzle we've had in a little while. Going into 2025, both safeties were a strength. They were a pillar. But now they both have question marks and for different reasons, right? Branch is recovering. He's coming back from his Achilles. The question is, when does he get back? How does he look when he gets back? Think Aleem McNeil this past year. He made a splash that first game back. Yeah, but it was obvious he still has some way to go to get back. Kirby Joseph, so much unknown about his injury. Treatment, Brad Holmes said they're slowly working him back. I think it was Holmes. It could have been Campbell. They said, what's it going to look like a month and a half from now? They're going to have a better idea then. I do think it was Campbell. James, let's start with the 2 starting safeties. What are your thoughts on those guys' health and how that impacts what they can do?
hmm If I'm the Detroit Lions, I'm not counting on Brian Branch to play a significant amount of snaps next year, or if he does later in the season, it's an Achilles and he's a DB. It's going to take over a year. So hopefully you get him back next season and then he's ready to go. But anything you get from him next year is a bonus. I think that they're going to be going into this offseason figuring that they just don't have Brian Branch, or at least not the Brian Branch they know. Kirby Joseph, we saw the picture that he posted of him getting work, like acupuncture needle stuff done on his knee. The one thing that's weird about this whole situation with him is they haven't said what is wrong with the knee.
Right.
It's weird that they have not given any specifics on that. And if you look at the photo in the background, you can see some wires sitting on the table, which are like kind of the wires that they would attach to those needles and to run electrical current between them to stimulate regrowth or regeneration of nerves. So I'm wondering if it's a nerve thing in his knee or something like that. I was in a car accident years ago and I had a thing where I couldn't move my foot afterwards for a while, and they did that with me, and then foot just took off, and now it's fine. They just run electrical current between the needles, and it
Hmm.
helps just kind of re-simulate those pathways, the nerve pathways. I don't know if that's what they're doing with him, but that's what it reminded me of when I saw that photo. Um,
Okay.
I think that they draft at least one safety, I think, at some point in this draft, and they re-sign their depth that they have, with Rocky Scene and Avante Maddox. They brought back Harper already. I think he was an exclusive rights guy, or they inherited another year in his contract. So, and Daniel Thomas is a free agent as well, a guy that they brought in off of waivers last year. So he's maybe another guy they just bring in a bunch of depth pieces and then draft and maybe bring in another veteran free agent guy on a 1-year deal that you can play for Branch.
Yeah.
Um,
I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I think they just have to have some insurance policies here, and as many as they can get at that
Yeah.
position, because you never know what you're going to get out of those two this season.
Yeah, if you're serious about the 2026 season, you need to have backup plans slash potential starting plans in place, Coach, right? What's it going to look like? Oh, is Avonte Maddox and Thomas Harper, who is still under contract, bringing back Avonte Maddox? Would that be enough back there? Just the secondary. We'll get to the defensive back. I mean, just the safety position. We'll get to the defensive backs in a minute. But Coach, the two big injuries to two pillared spots that were two extremely good players on this defense are question marks because, Kirby Joseph could be good for 3 or 4 weeks and then not. There's so much mystery for us. The Lions know way more than we do. And then obviously the Branch recovery thing. What's your perception of the safety room? I know you talked about the draft and how many are there, but what are you thinking for the stability of it and maybe free agency?
Well, the Maddox for sure. I mean, bringing him back is going to help. The guys that we had into that, that played last year did a pretty good job. If we take care of the front four and get, better pass rushes and sacks and things like that, you can protect that safety spot. Branch, December would be if it takes a full 12 months, it would be December. Branch, if he does come back, he's not going to be playing multiple positions like they did with him. I think he'd come back and just play that, just sit at that safety spot so that he's in a back pedal more than cuts and stuff like that, so they can protect him there. Joseph one is the goofy one, but and there's some free agents out there, that if you can afford, Blankenship from the Eagles is out there worth $8 million. 7-8 million. I mean, if you're looking at that, so it'll be, and then again we go to the draft concept. As Maddox, I think Maddox can fill in. I think Harper did a pretty good job last year, but I know they're definitely are going to bring somebody in that's going to push those guys, as well as possibly bring them in as a starter. Until we figure this mess out. So.
Yeah, a 1-year starter, someone who's older, a 1-year starter would be an ideal thing. Kind of like we looked at with defensive end. Somebody that could be a little bit older, but has started maybe at a high level, but doesn't command the same price that they did before. Because you guys both said, I mean, don't anticipate Brian Branch for the season. And then if you get him, it's a bonus because you can't go on planning on it because the nature of the injury. And then throwing in his, teammate over there, all the uncertainty there. Mm-hmm. Well, let's look at the rest of the secondary then. We've got the defensive back position. The Lions have their number one guy back, and that is DJ Reed. You still have multiple other guys under contract. You've got Terrion Arnold, Enos Rakestraw. You've got Rakia Sin as a free agent. That's a guy I'm hoping they're going to bring back. You've got Amik Robertson. I would love to have them bring him back as well. And you've got Arthur Millette. What are you seeing here, James? Get us started with what you think from the secondary that had its moments, but also had some injuries last year.
Yeah, well, Terry and Arnold had injuries last year. DJ Reed had some injuries last year. Reed looked phenomenal before the injuries and then not great afterwards. Kind of reminiscent of Cam Sutton that last year when he had the injuries. And then you've got Terry and Arnold's potential legal problems. That's something we really haven't talked about a whole lot on here, but there's the whole thing with the robbery / kidnapping thing where people that he knew were trying to get back things that had been stolen from him, I guess. And so there's questions of his involvement in it and whether he'll be charged. He hasn't yet, though, which is interesting. And the other people have been charged and he hasn't. So that I think tells me that they don't have enough evidence to do it. But when he played and when he was healthy, he was very, very good last season. All of us have talked about that quite a bit during the off season or during the season, that he played better than people thought he did.
Yeah, and this is the area where the Lions did spend a lot of money in free agency last year with DJ Reed, and they did that to replace Carlton Davis. But Amik Robertson also played a pivotal role these last couple of years. He arguably outplayed his contract, and Enos Rakestraw hasn't been healthy enough to get through multiple games. So they're hoping that he can do something this year. Coach, what do you make of this puzzle right here? Because, you said it, I think James said if the front four can get there, that could give some more help. Or maybe you said that, but
Yeah.
what are you making of the defensive backs?
Well, I think that's the thing is too, you as a coach, you're going, okay, Rick Straw, there's no possible way, knock on wood, he's going to get injured a third year. That's what you hope. But you also, he's lost all those reps. He's lost all those games.
Yeah.
They brought him in for a reason. I think Amik's the one. Amik's the free agent we have to sign, from that group for sure, just because of everything he's done for us. Plus, I think he's just a great locker room guy. And I think the guys love him, and I think he'll do anything that the team asks of him. So, and then you just hope that some of the other guys that were on the, on practice squad and stuff like that develop. We may have used all those guys. I mean, I know we got Whiteside and those guys coming back. So,
Yeah.
Can we go out and go after some of these free agents that are out there? Do we need to make a splash in the free agents market? That's what's going to be so much fun when this thing starts next Monday, is to see who do they start offering, and if they're not offering a corner, they're not offering a safety, then they have more news than we have, and we have to go with them. That makes sense. So, but I think Amik's the big one for me. Just because of what he brings to the table, and I think we're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, if they get Amik Robertson back because of the ability to play the slot and the outside, that's better than almost any free agent you would think they would bring in.
Yeah.
You get him back, you've got three very quality players there for running a nickel defense, and so that would be huge. So
Another guy the Lions have is Khalil Dorsey.
Yeah.
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 It was nice depth.
Yeah.
All right. And we got Jake Bates at kicker. We got Jack Fox at punter. I probably don't see anything changes there. So anything else you guys want to hit on? Final thoughts on the roster before we get out of here? Things will be going here pretty quickly.
No, I don't have anything.
All right, James?
No, I think we're pretty good.
All right, then I'm just going to throw a reminder out about the Detroit Lions Legends basketball. They're traveling around the state of Michigan. They're getting started here in early March. They'll be going around for 2 months. Communities left and right, up and down, all around the Lower Peninsula. Get out there, check out some of the former Detroit Lions players while they help raise money for local communities and have some fun with the basketball court. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about this show. You can find us on social media like Twitter, Instagram, as well as all major streaming platforms. That does include YouTube for the video version. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.